Welcome to Friday Flows. This is where I go through the investment flows in the ETF universe over the last week or so. We'll start with flows by asset class. As you can see, it was a risk-on type week. Equities taking the majority of the flows for the week. Big number for fixed income as well. Overall, people moving from cash, getting into equities and fixed income. So a big move into the markets one way or the other from the equity or a fixed income side. Very big move on the week, as you can see, $31 billion, out of the last month. You can see that, almost half of that came last week. So big move into equities. People don't want to miss out after the big jump up in the markets last Thursday and Friday. So I feel like that's a little bit of people chasing those returns. Over into what sectors did well, what peer groups did well. Obviously, North American equities were the leaders there, over 23 billion going in last week. But fixed income had, again, a big week. Corporate fixed income, global equities also did fairly well. Information technology, municipal funds. Actually, after last week, I was surprised, but municipal funds have been kind of a popular play here over the last couple of weeks. Digging into the individual names, the individual funds, SPY, it seems like one that we see every week on biggest flows, inflows, or outflows on the week. This week was a big inflow week, $6.3 billion coming in. Vanguard's total stock market fund, VTI, another 2.8. So really, this really tells you investors, risk on. I don't want to miss out. Let's get into the markets in a very broad scope. Invesco's QQQ, always kind of a good symbol of risk on or risk off. This week, $2.2 billion going into QQQ. The rest of the leaders on the week were actually more on the bond side. So, not necessarily surprising and kind of a risk on, but people, I think in general, were just getting back into the markets, moving from cash, moving back into investments, whether that be bonds or fixed income or equities. On the downside of flows, kind of all over the place. There's some bond funds, there's some large cap equity. The QQQ leverage fund 3 times was on the downside. Momentum factors. So kind of a broad scope of funds. People just kind of shifting from one area to the next is what I see there. Digging a little deeper in SPY, I always like to kind of show you what it did day to day, so you can kind of get a feel of how these funds move, and you kind of get an idea of how people are thinking as well. So last Thursday was the huge day in the markets, big flows into that day. They followed that up with another big flow day, $2 billion on Friday, another almost $3 billion on Monday. And the rest of the week, taking some money off the table. I kind of expected that would happen quicker on Monday, but people were still feeling bullish on Monday. And as the week has gone on, they've kind of taken some of the funds off the table. But that being said, over the last week, it's still $6 billion going into this fund. So huge flows into this fund. QQQ, again, last Thursday, big move, almost $2 billion going into that fund Thursday. And again, when the markets exploded, NASDAQ went up 7%. QQQ is going to take advantage of a lot of those names in that NASDAQ space. Moving into Monday, then Tuesday, still some decent flows into this fund, but taking some risk off as we've moved through the week and as the markets have kind of given back some of those returns. Another one I kind of wanted to walk through very quickly was SQQQ. Now, this wasn't one of the top names on the week, but this was a really interesting. So this SQQQ is the 3 times short of the QQQ. So one of the things that I find interesting with these leveraged funds is, when do people get in and out? So last Thursday, as the market was exploding, people jumped into this fund in a big way. So almost $700 million of flows, which, as you can see, took them positive for the month. But so this, this was down moving into this one day. But on a day where the markets really popped on the NASDAQ moving up, investors was like, you know what? I bet this is going to go back down. So, that's where you can really see is like, okay, who are the people or what are those thought process on people that go into these leverage funds? Now that's a big risk. It's 3 times to the downside. So if QQQ continues to go up, you're going to lose big. But this was a part where people are making the bet that after that pop, that there's going to be some downside and they're going to take advantage of that downside times three. So that was a huge day on the same day that the NASDAQ popped up. And then for the rest of the week, fairly low flows one way or the other. But just very interesting how people use these leverage funds, when they get in, when they get out. Again, QQQ last Thursday had a huge day, almost $2 billion. So that makes sense to me. The market's popping up. People want to make sure they're involved. SQQQ is looking at that same equation and saying, you know what, it's going to go the other way soon. So let's get in and let's take advantage of that downside. Now, I don't know that actually turned out for them, but that's one of those things that where investors, they can be right, they can be wrong. And so, it's just kind of an interesting play of when and where they get in with these leverage funds, because you can really get burned very quickly if you pick the wrong day or the timing in this wrong. So I hope this was helpful, kind of give you an idea of what was happening in the markets over the last week. I hope all is well, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.